Well, thanks to everyone who's joining us this evening. The majority of us are coming from the U.S. Council for Athletes Health. We are a third-party organization that works with colleges and universities as well as organizations across the country to help promote athlete health, safety, and wellness. We also work with Division I, Division II, NAIA, and JCAA. So if you're an athlete joining on this call, we're more than likely going to reach you in your current seat that you're sitting in. So with that being said, our conversation this evening is going to be in regards to those who are interested in getting into the field of medicine in various different roles. So we have Dr. James Borchers, who's going to join us speaking from the physician standpoint. Emily Skripchik is going to talk about her role and her journey to becoming a PA or a physician's assistant. And then Angie Beisner is with us as well, and she'll speak on being an athletic trainer as well as a healthcare administrator. And then we'll also speak on where we currently are in our journey. My name is Ray Everson. In the past or former life, I was an athletic trainer in the Division I setting and currently also working at the U.S. Council for Athletes Health. So with that being said, I'm going to start with Dr. Borchers. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in the seats that you're currently sitting in?
Yeah, thanks, Ray, and thanks everyone, the Big West, for having us this evening. My journey's been probably not unlike a lot of people that end up in athletic medicine. I had a passion, from a young age for athletics, and then, kind of a passion for, science and ended up in medicine. As an undergraduate, was a chemistry major. And then ended up, kind of working my way with some mentors into medical school with the idea that I'd be a family physician in a small town. I grew up on a farm, and so that was kind of my initial path. But as I got into medicine and started really, unfortunately, I'm old enough that when sports medicine was kind of a new field that really was coming along. And so during my residency, got a lot of exposure to fellows and a fellowship in sports medicine. Ended up going on and doing fellowship. And from there, my career has been mainly in academics, as a team physician, as a fellowship director, clinician, and really working in the athletics setting. And how I kind of ended up where I am today, is just through the years. Really had a passion for promoting athlete health, safety, and well-being, and trying to make athletics better when it came to those areas. And am fortunate enough to work with you and others at the U.S. Council for Athletes Health, a group that I helped co-found, and I'm president and CEO of today, and then really being involved in a lot of different levels of athletics, including being, fortunate enough to work with a lot of conference commissioners throughout college athletics and other leaders to try to help really shape athlete health and safety. So, I kind of go back to really the two things in life that I really enjoyed are solving problems, and helping people. And when you put problem solving and helping people together, sports medicine is a great place to do that. And then you also get the joy of kind of watching people return to play. And I think the last thing I would say is sports medicine is truly one of those areas of medicine where you get a team approach to what's going on. I mean, it takes a whole team and what they're doing to really make great progress with athletes and helping them achieve their goals. And that team aspect and the ability to work with others is something that I've enjoyed as well. So that's briefly kind of my journey. But if you want to be a physician, you're looking at 4 years of medical school, 3 to 5 years of residency, fellowship, and then then you actually start training. So it's a long journey, but it's one I've been really fortunate and blessed to have, and really happy to be where I'm at today.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think I heard you say this, but he is a former student athlete as well. He played football in college. So clear pathway from being a student athlete into the world of medicine as well, knowing how the body moves and works and how that can relate to where athletes still are currently sitting. So Angie, I'm gonna have you go next.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Excited to kind of talk about different paths that you can take as far as continuing your journey in athletics. I think for me, I got involved in athletics at an early age, and being an athletic trainer was a good way for me to be able to combine my love and passion for sports, but also for helping people. I didn't want to go the whole physician route where, you saw a patient, once or twice and didn't see them every day. I really preferred the clinical care piece of seeing them every single day. A little less schooling as well, which was kind of nice. But I really enjoyed being able to provide clinical care and get to know an athlete when they were healthy, as well as when they were kind of at their worst time when they were injured. My career really took me from working primarily with Division One institutions. So I was in Division One athletics for 25 years as a clinician. I spent 6 years as the head athletic trainer at a Division One institution. I also did some stuff with some national governing bodies, specifically with USA Lacrosse. So I've had a wide breadth of experience, both as a clinician and an administrator. So for me, I'm now transitioned into working at U.S. Council for Athletes Health, kind of using all those years of experience to help assist other institutions and student athletes. But for me, it really got started with a passion of both helping people and a love of sports, which was a great way to combine the two.
All right, awesome. Emily, you're up next.
Thanks, Ray. So my name's Emily. I was a student athlete at Ohio State for 5 years, played lacrosse there. Growing up, I always knew I wanted to be in medicine, thought I would go the doctor route. And then a couple years into my time at Ohio State, I had all sorts of different things that brought me kind of on the patient side of healthcare. And, fortunately, unfortunately, those experiences really continued to kind of drive my interest and love for medicine. I ended up having some interactions with a few PAs that I really loved, and that is what kind of sparked my thought that, kind of similar to what Angie said, different route, still medicine, shorter route. So that's kind of why I started looking into the PA journey to work in healthcare, and ended up I went to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston and just finished up there in December. And we'll be starting at Boston Children's on their oncology unit in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and PA school isn't for the faint of heart either, so don't discount yourself there either. And then finally, like I mentioned, my name is Ray Everson. I started off as a student athlete as well in undergrad. Was also SAC president at my institution as well. With that being said, I did not know exactly what I wanted to do once I ended up in college. I knew that I wanted to do something healthcare related. So I started off thinking that I wanted to go the PT route. Quickly realized that I did not want to be in a clinic every single day. So hopped over to athletic training. One thing most of you probably do know is that athletes do not have a lot of time. So I was told repeatedly that it was not a smart way to go. And those who know me, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm more than likely going to prove you wrong or find a way to do so. So I went the athletic training route, then went to grad school, was a GA athletic trainer for a while at the University of Kentucky, then wound up at Ohio State University for quite some time, working with a lot of different sports. But with that being said, I think with athletic training, and you're probably going to start seeing it more and more, you're going to find athletic trainers in a lot of different areas of the healthcare space, whether it is being the traditional athletic trainer in clinical care or venturing into healthcare administration or consultation in different aspects there. But I'd say the most rewarding aspects, obviously, is being with athletes, because I was an athlete, and being able to relate to the day in, day out struggles, I like to say, but also great benefits of being in that athlete seat and just seeing how much the lifestyle has changed from when I was in school till now. But as we continue this conversation, I'm going to jump right into it. I kind of started talking about it, but what would you consider the most rewarding as well as the most challenging aspects of your current career, what you're doing within your profession? And we'll go the same route. We'll start with Dr. Borchers.
Oh yeah, so big questions, Ray, that certainly, sometimes take some reflection. I think I'll start with the second question first, which is the most challenging. I think for me, the most challenging part of the career is, there's always so much to keep up with. There's so much to learn. There's so much ongoing, kind of what we call professional learning, adult learning, continuing learning. And I think balancing that with, taking care of patients, balancing your personal life, balancing, medicine is, whatever field you're in, athletic training, physician assistant, any other profession, where you're really involved in the care of people is a true vocation. I mean, you're really dedicated to it. And I haven't met very many people that, won't tell you that it really, monopolizes a big part of their life. And I think that, that takes a lot of effort. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I think the most rewarding thing for me in my career is the people that you work with, the people that, you come in contact with, their passion, their drive, it inspires you. And I think, again, in very few professions are you encountering a hero every day of your life. I mean, and that's really what happens in this profession, when you're um, seeing the way people give of themselves for other people, and dedicate themselves regardless of, of whatever field, whatever profession. And so I just continue to be amazed by what people do and, in medicine or in taking care of people. And I'd say that's the most rewarding, biggest privilege, is that, you encounter kind of a small miracle every day, regardless of what part of medicine you're in. And that's pretty special. So I always tell people you get a little bit more than whatever you think you're giving. And I think that's true in this profession.
Yeah, I can answer that question, Ray. I think that sometimes what happens, it's kind of like Dr. Borchers was just saying, but nothing stays the same. And I think that's a big challenge. It's also the part that's really fun and rewarding, but it's also the biggest challenge. So what you and I learned in textbooks, decades ago is not the same as what it is now. The climate of athletics is different than it was when Dr. Borchers and I both got started. It just continually changes and evolves. So being able to stay on top of those changes can be a little overwhelming at times. Everyone struggles with change. So just knowing that things are always going to look different and what you think you're going into right now will continue to evolve itself. But I do agree with what Dr. Borcher says. The people are really what make it rewarding. Seeing the success of somebody who's really struggling, seeing things where they're graduating for college or they're getting married or moving on with their lives. Those are really fun milestones to hear about or be a part of. And so I think that really the people part is really the rewarding part.
Yeah, kind of to echo a similar idea, but definitely my favorite part of, being in medicine and having that role is the relationships that you build with your patients, with the athletes, whoever it is that you're working with. I mean, there's nothing like that bond that you have and that you foster. And, it doesn't come the first time you meet a patient or an athlete. It's time after time and building that trust and building that connection, which is just so special and unique, but also can kind of tie into the most challenging part, because no matter what, field of medicine you're in, the outcome's not always going to be the one that you might want. And that can be incredibly challenging. Even if, you're not the one going through it, you've built this really strong relationship and connection, and you want only the best for your patients and who you're working with. So when things don't work the way you want them to work, which is life and it happens and you have to be there for them, that having those really strong relationships is great, but also makes those things more difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we could all agree that relationships is probably at the top of why we love what we do or are doing. One thing I'll add in there as well, coming from an athletic training standpoint, is if you are in the collegiate setting, you get to travel quite a bit. So being able to see new places, meet people in different places, and build relationships kind of outside of your current bubble is also very rewarding. And just being able to see and experience new things can be very rewarding as well. But I definitely agree with Emily here as far as the challenging pieces of what we do is when things don't go well. Because at the end of the day, we all want everyone to be able to do what they love to do, whether that's on the field of play or at work or with their kids or whomever we're working with. And when that doesn't go quite as planned, it can be challenging for us as healthcare clinicians as well. But kind of switching gears here a little bit. When you were in your day to day, I know Dr. Borchers, you're still in the clinic. What did your normal day look like, or what was a normal day versus a day that might have kind of gone off the rails a little bit and looked a little bit different than what people would kind of think your role would be?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that you can never plan for, right? Is you just don't know what a normal day is going to look like and what that means. You know, for me, it usually means a pretty full day of patients. You know, sometimes, you know, you're seeing 20, 25 patients in a 4.5 hour time period, you know, so you're trying to be efficient. And as you prepare, you think you know what's kind of coming in the door, but you're always challenged with usually something that you're not prepared for. And I think the thing that's most difficult about that is that sometimes, you know, you really get a challenge. You know, you're presented with a diagnosis that just the other day I saw, you know, a really young, healthy person, you know, who came in with, you know, some pretty mild complaint, and it ended up that they had, you know, a soft tissue mass in their lower leg. And now I'm dealing with most likely, you know, soft tissue, you know, cancer that is not something that, you know, we normally see, but you got to spend, you know, a lot more time and a lot more um, of your day, you know, dealing with that sort of problem. And I think that's, you know, that's the challenge with medicine, right? Is that in any field is that you oftentimes have to be ready to deal with things that you aren't necessarily expecting. And I think you know, what is so, you know, important for me in that, in kind of in that realm was my experience probably as an athlete, because I certainly was not the type of athlete that won every game, and I was never the best at everything that I did. I mean, and I think you build resiliency from that. And I think a lot of times I see athletes that go into medicine that understand where their patients are coming from. You mentioned not getting good outcomes, and realizing that, you know, sometimes we have to do the best we can for our patients and try to realize that it's not always necessarily what we want for our patients. It's, you know, we have to remember what it is that they want and what they, you know, what they're striving for. And so I think, you know, that's kind of the typical day. I'd say the thing that I like least about my day is the administrative stuff that you have to do in medicine now. You know, the paperwork, or the, you know, the dealing with insurance companies and, you know, peer-to-peers and all these things, you know, that you sometimes can get frustrated with. But I think at the end of the day, if you keep patients focused, you know, you do, you know, those things become less irritating. But no one day looks like the next. I learned that, you know, a long time ago. And I always say when I get through the clinic day, I usually take a deep breath and kind of try to look back and make certain that there was nothing that I didn't miss. But it's one of the privileges too of having people come in and wanting you to take care of them.
Yeah, I don't know that there's ever a typical day in the life of an athletic trainer. I think you start out with a plan, and then it's how far do you deviate from that plan. It could be dependent on weather changes, and that changed your practices. You could be in the emergency room with a student athlete. Somebody could really be struggling with a mental health crisis. So I think the best athletic trainers have some sort of plan, a structure of their day, and then they're able to go through the day and eliminate the unnecessary things to move other things to the top. So it's kind of a constant shuffle of what the top item is, or what the most important item is. And I think the key is just making sure that you can recognize that. That's also what makes it really challenging and can make it really fun, is the fact that it's not going to look the same day. I'm not going to, you know, repeat itself. It's not going to be Groundhog's Day. Every day is going to be something new and exciting and different. So just making sure you're prepared for the changes that might come.
Yeah, similar story, different setting. But I'll be in inpatient medicine, which looks like basically all of our patients are admitted, so they're in the hospital all the time, which, you know, makes, of course, the setting is a little bit different than, of course, athletic training or outpatient clinic. But basically this structure of my day, kind of get to work, see what's going on. You check out your patients with the team that was there before, see if there's medication changes or anything that you want to do right ahead, and then kind of round on the patients with the whole team. And then after that point is when the similar story happens, right? Like you have the list of things that you want to do and things that need to happen, but at any moment things change and you just have to kind of roll with it. And it's a lot about prioritizing and working with that list of what needs to happen right now, what can be pushed, and then communicating with the team as well, which I think especially from athletics and being comfortable in a team environment and being able to lean on other people, ask for help, all of that is really very helpful and big in all aspects of healthcare.
Yeah, that's actually going to be my next question, kind of leading into what have you learned or what has being an athlete taught you or helped you with in your current roles? And for Angie, obviously you've worked with a lot of athletes. I'll change the question for you a little bit. What has your role just being in athletics helped you with as you've gone through your career? Because we know although being an athlete might be different than being staff, there's a lot of overlap on how we work through things. So I'm gonna start with Dr. Borchers.
Yeah, I think Emily already kind of spoke to this. For me, it's about resiliency, and despite your best efforts, you don't always get the best outcomes. And by that I mean it's just impossible to think that you're always going to win, whatever that looks like. But that you continue to, you continue to push, you continue to give effort, you continue to take care of patients and understand that sometimes the fact that you care is the most important thing. And I think patients recognize that they know that that you're doing your best or that you care, and that oftentimes they just need somebody who understands where they're at and understands what that means. And I think some of my best experiences have not been when there's great outcomes and great wins, but when you are helping patients, in those times when things are not perfect. And I guess recently I had another patient who, I'd been, taken care of for 7 or 8 years after some really tough diagnoses, and, something that I had diagnosed that, some other folks had not. And, she said to me in one of our last visits before she passed away, you gave me life when there wasn't going to be any life, like all the things I got to experience during that time. And I felt like, prior to that, like, wow, here's somebody who I think is still fairly young, who doesn't really have, the full life that I would expect, for somebody her age. But, she kind of brought me back to center, with that. And so I think as an athlete, you learn that as well. Not every outcome is going to be perfect. You're certainly, at least I don't know too many athletes. I'm sure there's some out there that have won every game or never made a mistake. But you learn how to kind of rebound from that, how to stay resilient, how to, have better resolve. And I think you do better because of that. And I think that's probably what being an athlete taught me has helped me the most in medicine.
Yeah, I think that having this new role where I'm working more kind of in the corporate space at times and getting to know other people that are outside of athletics, I think it really highlights how unique the athletic environment is. And I think sometimes as student athletes, you probably don't give yourself enough credit for how transferable those skills are in the real world. Because if you've worked in an athletic environment for a long period of time, like I did, if you're a former student athlete, you learn invaluable lessons that really put you far above and beyond anybody else that you're working beside. So whether it's that resiliency, whether your ability to pivot, to make decision changing, to accept failure, to continue to compete, to have successes and wins. I mean, these are really good life lessons that most people do not have when they start their professional career. So you're already 4 or 5 years ahead of people before you even start your career. And I would say for me, that's highlighted more now in the work that we do when we work with people outside of athletics. Just the pace at which we work is significantly different than other people, let alone our ability to think through and solve a problem quickly or see a different perspective. So to me, I think those are the most valuable lessons and things that really, as student athletes, maybe sometimes you don't see are great traits when you're looking for other jobs or other careers.
Yeah, I'll say something that kind of ties into the school aspect of going into medicine, no matter which field you're in. You're, doing grad school of some sort. It's always difficult. It's a lot of hours. It's, a big commitment. And coming, kind of fresh out of that, the one of the biggest things for me, a lot of things that you learn in sports are very transferable to being in a difficult environment. But for me, something that really definitely stands out is the coachability and the ability to, take feedback and improve on that. Especially in the, second half of my schooling, it's all clinicals. So you're just, paired up with a preceptor and you're in all different environments doing different things. There's different expectations every single time, every day. You never know what you're walking into. You know, people are having good days, bad days. It just is what it is. But that's your time to learn. And for me, something that I think really helped me a lot more so than a lot of my peers who didn't have an athletic background was the ability to take feedback in difficult situations, which when you're a student athlete, you're doing that all the time. You're in stressful situations, you're at practice, you're in games, your coaches are having a day. It might be you, it might not be you, but whatever it is, you've had that experience, you're able to bounce back from that and keep learning and growing. And I think that's just something that a lot of people don't have that experience and they don't know how to deal with that and they shut down and they're not sure, which is fair because it's uncomfortable and no one likes being uncomfortable. But when you've had that time and time again, and then you go into school, clinicals, the workforce, wherever it is, and you've been able to, have that moment with yourself and be like, okay, I've been here before. I can do this. I can grow from this. That's just it puts you so far beyond your peers, and it really helps, yourself, and then you're able to learn, and then you can teach your peers and all of that. So that's probably been my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and I think for me, it goes back to like being on a team of 20, 25, 30 people. Everyone's different, and you have to figure out a way to communicate with every single person on the team to achieve a common goal. And that is very transferable into the real world. You're going to work with some people that you don't see eye to eye with. You're going to work with some people who you might be like the same person and think the same, but you've got to figure out how to translate that into whatever you're doing or whatever your goal or project might be. And I think the other big thing that I definitely took away from being an athlete is just time management, or the lack of time that you felt like you had. And then you get in the real world and you're like, oh, there's a lot more time to work with. I don't have to make a decision in 5 seconds. I actually have a few days. So just thinking of slowing down sometimes is pretty helpful, and not thinking that you have to constantly work at that fast pace that you got used to. So it's an adjustment period, but I think it definitely helps. Like when you know things have to be done quickly, you don't get stressed out as much, or at least hopefully you don't get stressed out as much, or you're able to develop a plan to help alleviate some of the stress that you might be going through especially in the field of medicine, regardless of what field you're in or what area you're in. So we've already started touching on this with how some of the skills are transferable from being an athlete into the real world. But obviously with the nature of the job market right now, there are a lot of jobs, but people are finding it hard to find a job or make it through the interviewing process. But what would some advice be from you to give to the athletes on making themselves more hireable in the job search? What can they do to make that process a little bit better? Start with you, Dr. Borchers.
Yeah, wow. I think, I think Angie said something earlier that kind of stuck with me, is that you've been in these situations before. So being able to talk about what you do well, what you don't do well, how you handle complex situations, how you handle adversity, why you're able to do that, and why people can count on you, I think are huge benefits of having been a student athlete, that serve you really well, regardless of what profession you go into. But certainly, in a medical profession. And I think, you know, uh, Emily said, learning how to, work with others, but take feedback and, use that feedback constructively, be better, and always be striving to be better, I think are things that, are unique skill sets of athletes. And I think that's why certain companies hire athletes. I think that's why those companies are successful. It's not a secret. And I think, athletes, honestly should share those experiences with an employer so that, they understand that background and what they're bringing to, to a employment setting that might be different than other individuals.
I think oftentimes people get intimidated by the hiring process, and really you need to think back that you've already gone through this. You've already gone through this when you went through the recruiting process. You were looking at particular institutions or colleges that you thought might be good. They were looking at you and evaluating you. If they weren't interested in you as a student athlete, it wasn't necessarily personal. You just weren't the right fit for them. So nothing you could say was going to change their mind. Just like you might go visit it campus and feel like, okay, that doesn't quite feel right. Nothing that coach could say was going to change your mind. So a lot of times when we're talking about looking for a job search, the first thing that you're doing is, okay, what are they going to ask and how should I answer that question? But in reality, it's all about fit. And so the best advice I can give is to highlight your strengths of who you are and to be the best version of yourself, but be yourself and be authentic, because that's going to shine through and that's going to tell people very easily that's going to make you a person that would be somebody that would be a good hire if that's the fit they're looking for wherever you're being employed. But making sure that you can not try to predict what people want, but more how do you highlight yourself and what are the best qualities that you may have.
Yeah, I would say too, I mean, just kind of reflecting on the last few minutes when we just were talking about the different qualities that, you get as a student athlete and are so helpful. It's really easy when you're in it because you're on a team of all these people that do the same thing and you hang out with all these people that do the same thing, but it's not normal. Like the things that you do as a student athlete and the things that you learn are not normal. And you'll see when you get out into the workforce and you're around other people that they don't have those same traits that you have. So I would really definitely take time to, think about your day to day and think about the things, all those buzzwords that we were saying, the time management, the resiliency and all of that, which those are huge things and they're really important when you're, going through interview processes and things to talk about and stories to talk about. Like think about your day and think about the, moments in your life that you can lean on and talk about in these interviews, because that builds who you are and it makes you a lot different than some of the other applicants that aren't going to have those experiences yet. So yeah, just remember that all these things that you're learning and all these traits that's not like the standard.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add as well is don't be afraid to talk about what your dreams and aspirations are in the field that you're currently trying to get into. Because obviously you're going to be starting out as a young clinician or a young professional, so you might not have all those certifications that other individuals might have in your respective field. So talk about what you want to do. Talk about where you see yourself as you continue your career, and kind of talk about how the current person that you're talking to can help you achieve some of those goals, so they feel a little bit more drawn into who you are as a person as well. And I always like to say the interview process is a two-way street. So you're also interviewing the person that you're sitting in front of as well, or the people you're sitting in front of. So don't be afraid to ask them questions about what led them to where they currently are, what they enjoy about what they do currently, what they wish they could change. Because just like Angie said, it's a recruiting process. You chose the school that you're currently sitting at for a reason, and you want that to be the same process that you go through when you're searching for that job right out of school, whether it's in a couple months or a few years from now. To start thinking through what makes you the best you, and how they can help you along the way. So just a couple more questions here on my end. We're going to start with this one. What do you wish people told you before you went down the path that you currently are in the profession that you're in? Let's start with you, Jim.
Well, I think that I wish somebody would have told me that, each step gets harder. And I don't mean that in a way to be negative. It's just that each step gets, you have more responsibility. When for me, when I was a undergrad student, I thought that was difficult. And then I got to medical school and I thought, wow, medical school is really hard. And then you do residency and you're like, man, residency is really tough. And when I get done with residency, it'll get easier. And then fellowship became more difficult. And then you're on your own as an attending. And so I say all that. And again, that those steps, it's a process, and you have to embrace each process. But just like everything you ever do for the first time as an athlete, you're prepared for it and you can do it and have confidence for it. And then the other thing that I wish that somebody would have told me, prior to, to kind of getting into all this is, I always thought going into medicine, I would have a profound effect on the people that I took care of, but every patient has a huge effect on you. And so it's, as you mentioned, that kind of two-way street, and what you experience with other people and patients is, it's so different than what I initially thought when I was going to go into medicine. And so I think, not that that's a bad thing they didn't share that, but I wish somebody would have shared it, because I think I might have been a little more prepared for it.
I think one of the most important things to share with people is how important it is to take care of yourself. When you spend so much time taking care of other people, you really empty out the tank at the end of the day. So if you haven't gotten in a good habit with that, that can not only impact your ability to provide the best possible care, but impact your health in a pretty profound way. And as student athletes, you're so structured because somebody's telling you kind of when to work out, how to structure your day, giving you advice on what to eat, or providing meals. It's really important that you take those good habits and you continue to utilize those. Once you get behind, it's hard to catch back up again. As any of you know, that once you've gotten out of shape, it would have been way easier to stay in shape. So I think it's just really important when you're in a healthcare profession, because it takes so much physical and mental energy to make sure that you're providing a way to take care of yourself.
Well, Angie stole mine, so I had to come up with a new one really quickly. But other than that, which I do think, especially being in grad school, was like a huge change, going right from being in athletics, and your day is structured, you get to work out, all those things which are so good for your, mental health, all of a sudden are out and you have to figure it out on your own. But another thing that I would say is kind of back to just that sensation of being uncomfortable, which I think is like the sweet spot of where you learn and grow, and you kind of get to make that choice when you're uncomfortable. And in sports, as student athletes, you feel that a lot. But when you're outside of athletics and all of a sudden you're in an educational environment, you're in a clinical environment, wherever it might be, being uncomfortable feels different. You're working with people now, you're, providing care, making decisions, which, when you're a student, don't always, it always feels uncomfortable. You're never fully sure. And I'm sure that never completely goes away, even after you have years of experience, but being able to embrace that feeling of discomfort and continuing to grow from it and not letting it kind of bring you down at all has been something that I wish I knew earlier, even just going into school.
Yeah, I think Angie kind of stole all of our self-care tips and tricks that we all definitely say you need to either start developing a plan for, or don't fall off once you do graduate. One thing that I will add is, I think when you're an athlete, you're just so hyper focused on what you currently are doing or what you feel like you need to get through on a day-to-day basis. And when you start as a freshman, you're also typically either funneled into a major or what you think you might want to do. I think the one thing I wish someone would have told me initially is, where you start doesn't necessarily have to be where you end up. I think you can look at all of us here. We all started somewhere, and we're probably not sitting in the current seats that we thought we were going to be sitting in years after graduating. So just know that as you're going through the process, you might start as an athletic trainer, but you might end up being a consultant or an entrepreneur or something else in the healthcare space. So just look at where you're currently sitting as a means of that you're gaining the education, you're gaining the experience, but you can always use that experience in a different light or a different way once you're a few years into your career. So don't feel like you have to just go one direction and stay that direction. Feel free to pivot as you go along the way. And then finally, last question that I have here for everyone. What is one thing that you wish most people knew about your profession? Or what is one thing that you think most people see your profession as that it really is not? Looks like Jim might have to think a little bit. I can jump to Angie if you need a little bit more time.
No, no, I hate to put Angie on the spot. I think the one thing that I wish that people think about medicine and that in our profession is and I don't want to go back to something I said before, but I think it's the profound effect that individuals have on you as a clinician when you're seeing them. And dealing with that's not always easy. And I think that, you take each of those experiences and they shape what your decision-making process is with a patient. I think that most people think in medicine that the clinician is there to, give advice and tell you what to do and you should do it. And, but it doesn't always, it doesn't work that way. And so you leave you leave at the end of the day, sometimes I think, affected and, sometimes positively, sometimes not positively by the interactions you have, with patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one. I would agree with that completely. I also say maybe that, especially from athletic trainers, sometimes it's hard for people to understand just how much they're juggling on a daily basis. And so there's often multiple people, pulling at them at multiple times. That's one of the worst things about text messaging. You can be with a patient and 3 more athletes are texting you about something at the same time. So just understanding that can be a bit of a challenge and having some patience. And that everything that no matter what area of medicine that you're in, what we do is evidence-based and based on research. And I think it's really hard, some of the information that's out there, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or WebMD, it's really overwhelming for practitioners at times to kind of combat all the information that's out there. Some of it's good, a lot of it's really bad, but understanding that when you have clinicians that you're working with in the healthcare profession, they really are using the best practice and evidence-based practice, not just something randomly they saw on social media. So understanding that background and their knowledge base, I think it would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think I'd say for especially being a PA, one thing that just depending on where you are, there's a lot of just like unknown from different people of like what our role is, which just can always be difficult with, depending on the situation and just making sure, you're both on the same page, kind of tying back to, I think it was one of the first questions about building that relationship. And this, I think, can apply to a lot of different jobs and a lot of different settings, but, being able to start off introducing yourself, telling them who you are, what you can do for them, and making sure you're on the same page in that sense, because, starting off a relationship on, rocky territory of not knowing, who you are, what your role is, what you can do for that person, if you're being pulled in all these different directions at this moment, things like that, is just not a great place to start a relationship. So I think having that to begin with is also really important.
All right, to wrap things up here, is there anything else that anyone would like to add to our audience? Any tips, tricks, words of advice that you haven't already mentioned? I know we hit a lot of the areas here this evening. So with that being said, thanks to everyone who joined us. I'm going to turn this back over to Quentin.
Definitely. Thank you guys all so much. We greatly appreciate it. A lot of valuable information, a lot of great insight. And then I definitely feel like I learned a lot too. So I'm very excited to get this recording out to everyone. Really appreciate y'all. I know it's a little bit later on your coast. So thank you for taking the time, carving the time out of your day and everything. I'm really greatly appreciative that we can get this information out to everyone. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.